Good morning. I'm KHEO Meteorologist Chris Ramirez. Just wanted to hop on here to give you a weather update. Of course, no rain is falling across Houston, and we are seeing mostly dry conditions, and roadways are becoming a bit drier as we progress throughout the morning, but temps right now in the 70s and 60s. Some of us are actually dealing with some showers, and also too, the National Weather Service has dropped those flood watches that were in effect for those counties that were south of Houston. But one thing to keep an eye on is that we are still tracking this low pressure system that's currently tracking through the southern part of the state. More so as we look at radar, more of the heavier storms to the northeast of Houston, but we're going to have to keep an eye on what's happening to the west of town. So we still have a batch of showers from Austin to Gonzales, even to Runge, even towards Victoria. So as we progress throughout the day, and even though as of now this may not look like much, the daytime heating and the warming temperatures could actually feel some of these storms to become a bit more stronger as they progress closer towards the Houston area later this afternoon. So that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. I think the flooding threat really not as high at the current moment because we haven't really received that much rain. But of course, our future track model still showing some possible downpours and still possible storms to move through the Houston area between the hours of 2 o'clock, maybe lasting through 4 to 5 p.m. So we're still really not out of the woods. Still could see some heavier downpours to stronger storms, maybe closer towards I-69 to the east side of town in areas towards Beaumont. That's the area that could still see some of those heavier showers this afternoon between at least 2 to 5 p.m. as this low continues tracking across the southern half of the state. So even though it may seem like dry conditions right now, as we warm up through the day, that daytime warming usually fuels storm activity, especially when we have an unstable atmosphere. So good news though is that once we get past 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, we're going to see that rain track off towards Louisiana, and we're going to be mostly dry, even though we could still see some isolated showers moving through some locations as we head into the overnight and morning hours of Saturday. So for the next 12 hours, high temps today still topping out in the lower 70s, but just keep in mind that closer towards 2, 3, 4 o'clock, we still could get those heavier downpours to start flaring up and moving towards the Houston area, which is the reason why we're keeping that weather impact alert in place for today, at least through the early afternoon hours. If you're heading out to the U of H watch party at Avenida Houston, just keep in mind that we are going to see mostly dry conditions, but just bring an umbrella just in case we get one of those isolated showers moving through. Of course, it starts at 7:30, tip off at 9 p.m., but it's looking mostly isolated in nature in terms of this evening. So just keep that in mind. So we do have more storms on the way for the start of next week as another cold front will be moving through. Models are indicating that this could remain more north of town for the weekend, but just also we are kind of getting into severe weather season. So every frontal boundary that does move through southeast Texas, we're going to have to watch really closely because it's not going to take much for us to get that severe weather threat as we go into the later months, especially as we head into April. Just to sort of sum up what I've just discussed, the National Weather Service dropping those flood watches for much of southeast Texas, looking like the flooding threat and the high water threat has diminished a bit, but just also keep in mind that we could run into some nuisance showers and storms later this afternoon as the Storm Prediction Center is still keeping areas across Houston and southeast Texas under a slight risk for flooding for today. So it's not going to take much in terms of if a lot of rain does fall in a little amount of time, that could bring some ponding on roadways because we still have this low that's still in the picture. So as long as that's there, we're still going to have that unstable atmosphere here across the southern half of the state going into this afternoon, and we're already seeing some of those storms becoming a bit more heavy, tracking off towards the northeast of town and then even towards the west portions of Houston. And you're able to see as we warm up, these are becoming more filled in as that daytime heating does fuel these storms, especially in the afternoon hours. So we're keeping an eye on these showers west of town. They could move and become a bit more heavy as they move closer towards Houston. So just keep that in mind between the hours of 2 p.m. 4 o'clock is when we could start seeing some of these showers move into town and bring some heavy rain to some portions of Houston as we head into the early afternoon hours. And like I said before, more of the threat's going to be along the I-69 corridor, maybe eastern Harris County could get some downpours, but you can't rule out downpours for the rest of the city in the early afternoon hours. So just that's why we're keeping you aware on what's expected, even though it is a little bit quiet out there if you are heading out right now. And then the good news is that we will see that rain taper off later today into the overnight hours as we warm on up going into this afternoon and evening. So definitely keep up to date with the latest weather forecast. We are keeping an eye on the forecast closely as we progress throughout the day. But the good news is that rain chances definitely will be ending by Monday, but our temps are going to still remain a bit warm with highs in the 80s, lows in the 60s, but storms still likely for this afternoon. So always keep up to date on the KHU 11 weather app.